Hey there, LBT Squad. I'm your host, Alex Pop. If you're on board with us, then you know by now that we're going over each and every one of the Land Before Time movies in celebration of the all-new The Land Before Time 14 Journey of the Brave coming to DVD on February 2nd. We've now come to where the series goes Vernian, The Land Before Time 5, The Mysterious Island. I still remember that night when my parents went out, and me, my older sister, and younger brother watched this and The Time of the Great Giving and Journey Through the Mist for the first time. I insisted on watching The Mysterious Island first because I saw that it had Chomper in it. And the return of Chomper from the Great Valley Adventure is certainly a welcome addition to this fivequel, but there's more than fan service that makes The Mysterious Island hold water. No pun intended. And as always, these are in-depth reviews, so spoiler alert. The first comment I have to make is actually on the opening logos. A Michael Tavera piece plays over the Universal logo, and it starts out faint, and then continues to get louder and louder until the title appears. I don't know if I'm not alone in this, but I love when something of the sort is done with opening logos, because it gives me a great feeling of exhilaration for what's to come in the movie. Universal seems to be doing this a lot more often, and I hope they do so in Journey of the Brave. There are a few new voice actors in this movie, and they're all great choices. Miriam Flynn now voices Grandma Longneck after the death of Linda Gary, but the similarity of the two voices is amazing. I never would have been able to tell that Grandma had had two voice actresses. Also in the line of convincing replacements is Aria Noel Curzon as Ducky, and for Sarah, we have Andy McAfee, the older sister of Scott McAfee, who was the previous voice actor for Littlefoot. Speaking of whom, Brandon LaCroix is Littlefoot in this one, and for the most part he's pretty good, although there are times where he does sound a bit stuffy. The movie also has a new director, Charles Grosvenor, who held the director's chair until The Land Before Time 12, The Great Day of the Flyers. Grosvenor retains the tone and animation style of the Roy Allen Smith trilogy, and continued to do so until it devolved into more bright and overly kid-friendly territory. So the movie starts off as usual in the Great Valley, where Littlefoot, Sarah, Ducky, Petrie, Spike, and all their families are living the good life. Grandpa is reminding the kids of how there's more than enough green food in the Great Valley to last a lifetime, but then irony strikes when a mammoth swarm of locusts descends on the Great Valley and devours every plant in sight. With their home now a wasteland, the dinosaurs all agree to leave and find another place to survive until the Great Valley is fertile again. You may remember in my last review when I said that I like when kids' movies can show a character's thoughts and feelings without needing dialogue to explain it. There's another example of that here. As the herd leaves the Great Valley, Littlefoot turns back and looks out at the barren landscape with a confusedly depressed look on his face. You get the feeling that he's thinking, so what if there's nothing left? I love it anyway. This brief moment conveys his strong affection for the place. Although considering the eye the writers have for the main character's development, they might have acknowledged other little details, like when we see wide shots of the herds journeying across the desert. Characters we've seen from previous installments, such as Hip, Nod, and Mutt, are nowhere to be seen. I know I'm nitpicking, but it still would have been nice if they had been present, even if they didn't have any speaking roles. As the herds spend days wandering through the desolation that the Locust left behind, it eventually gets to the point where they're torn on where to go next after coming across a dinosaur skeleton. It's here that Sarah's dad is at his most absolutely ludicrous. Grandpa merely suggests going in a direction contrary to that of which Sarah's dad has in mind, which somehow prompts this from him. Listen here, Longneck. I, for one, am getting fed up with this "I'm taller, so that makes me better than you" attitude of yours. Good grief! I think even Terrence Fletcher from Whiplash would have to say that that was below the belt. I just love to hate the scumbaggery of the Three-Horn family. This leads the herds into division, and they all decide to go their own separate ways. But Littlefoot and his friends aren't willing to settle for the adults' decision, and once again, it all comes down to the Gang of Five to set things right. So they set out in the middle of the night to find verdant land and assure that the herds stay together. They drive their feet hard into the ground to lead tracks as they walk, so the adults can follow them a distance behind. After a long walk through the morning, they suddenly run into the ocean, or big water as they call it. It's a spectacular frame as the gang stares out toward the sea. Nearby, they notice an island green with vegetation a few miles from shore, and they make their way there via a path of rocky land that happens to connect the island to the mainland. I'm not pretending to be an expert on how land forms, but I'm going to have to call crap on there being a single thin strip of land connecting a 10-mile wide island to an entire continent. And if that wasn't a ridiculous enough plot convenience, the gang is halfway across when an earthquake occurs at that very moment, causing a tidal wave which takes out the bridge. Earthquakes always seem to have excellent plot convenient timing in these movies. I also never got why, for the entire duration of the earthquake, the sky turns red. So they all hightail it to the island in time before the wave destroys the land path. They have their vegetation, but are unable to make it known to their families, who did follow their trail as planned. So they wonder how to get back across the sea, which begins the song Big Water, a catchy and memorable tune with an amusing rhyming scheme. The song is basically the gang pondering the potential perils of the deep, and they actually end up making some really good guesses between the crabs, octopi, and jellyfish that they imagine. So the kids make their first effort to escape from the island by floating back on a log, but the attempt fails when a shark attacks them. They manage to evade it, but because of how many times the shark flipped their log around, they wind up back on the island again. It seems hopeless for them as they try to sleep when night falls. Longing to see their families again, they try to manage their insomnia by singing the song Always There, easily the most moving of any song in the series, and the highlight of the movie. It starts with Ducky recollecting on how her mother would comfort her when she was scared at night, while Sarah sings about how her dad would give her reassurance when she was afraid of thunderstorms. I love Sarah's part because, 1, Andy McAfee is a really good singer, and 2, when we first see Sarah Hatch in the first movie, her father is comforting her as a thunderstorm starts. But it's Littlefoot's part that always gets me. As he looks up at this bright star, he sings about what his mother had always told him even after she died, that no matter where he was, she would never leave him. This is the strongest and saddest of any time in the sequels where Littlefoot mentions her again. I've also always loved how, as Littlefoot sings, there's a shot of the others listening, and Sarah takes a step forward toward him, indicating that Sarah probably understands Littlefoot's pain more than the others, as she was the only one who ever saw him with his mother. So the gang all find therapy in the song, and they finally go to sleep. The next morning, they wake up to see the shadow of a shark tooth cast on a boulder, and they immediately scream and run. Firstly, this should be kind of a deja vu moment for them, and second, I'm not buying that they wouldn't turn around to see the actual predator after seeing its shadow. That would be anyone's next instinct. But that's not the case here, because it makes Chomper's appearance more surprising. Yes, as mentioned before, Littlefoot and the gang reunite with Chomper, who uses sharp-tooth vocal patterns, but is bilingual and is able to speak to the gang as they hatched him. Chomper comes to the conclusion through a conversation with his parents while the others hide in bushes that his friends must not be safe around them. I must mention the question that was always raised for me. How did Chomper and his parents get on the island? Sure, there was the land path, but was it really strong enough to bear the weight of 2 7-ton tyrannosaurs? Hey, Chomper's back! So Chomper leads his friends to a forest of flowers that have a strong, revolting smell, knowing that it will keep any sharp-tooth from coming across their scent. As he goes off to provide food for them, he says, "I just love having friends for dinner," which segues into a humorous song in which the gang takes the statement literally. Although it's during the song that I started to realize that the laws of the dinosaurs not knowing many modern-day words don't apply to any of the musical numbers. Well, I recognize the patterns, so I guess I can just go with it. So despite Chomper's hospitality, Sarah isn't shy about expressing her distrust toward him for the fact that he's a sharp-tooth. This grieves Chomper, who leaves them in tears. Littlefoot follows to try and apologize, but they are interrupted by Chomper's mother. She nuzzles her son gently, assuming that Littlefoot is Chomper's prey, and Littlefoot is astounded to see that sharp teeth are able to love. This is one of my favorite character development scenes in any of the sequels, because it's conceivable that more so than other leaf eaters, Littlefoot has abhorred sharp teeth other than Chomper because of the one that caused his mother's death. But it's now that he sees that sharp teeth aren't just mindless killing machines, that they experience emotion like any other dinosaur, and Chomper isn't unique in that regard. In the next scene, yet another huge shark tooth living on the island attacks the kids outside of their hiding place and corners them on a cliff above the ocean. But fortunately, Chomper's parents show up, and a fierce fight ensues between the three shark teeth, which actually gets a little bloody. You know, for kids! So the fight ends with Chomper's dad knocking the evil shark tooth off of the cliff and into the ocean, but it sweeps Chomper off with it. Knowing that he can't swim with such small arms, Littlefoot plunges in to save his friend. While the evil shark tooth drowns, Littlefoot and Chomper get help back onto land from a friendly plesiosaurus named Elsie. Chomper's parents show gratitude to Littlefoot for rescuing his son, and Chomper translates their roars to mean that they'll do no harm to his friends. Elsie overhears the kids' separation from their families and offers to give them a lift back across the ocean. So Littlefoot and the gang bid farewell to Chomper and his parents, and they travel back to the mainland on board Elsie. After a touching reunion between the herd and the main characters, the adults show them that because they were looking for them, not only are they staying together, but they came across a fertile area at shore where they stay until the Great Valley is returned to its original condition. After a time lapse, the credits start to roll while Littlefoot, Sarah, Ducky, Petrie, and Spike stand on a ledge looking out at the once again green Great Valley, while the Michael Tavera track called Storybook Ending accompanies the scene. This ending is pleasant enough, but it's too brief and there's not enough weight to it. We know from the full regrowth of all the plants that the dinosaurs have been gone from the Great Valley for an entire year. And considering how Littlefoot's fondness for the place was established early in the movie, it would be a poignant and triumphant return for him and his friends after being away for so long. And watching the movie as an adult, I just didn't feel like enough of that was conveyed. Still, at the end of the day, this is one of the most solid of the Land Before Time franchise. It's only brought down by one outrageous plot convenience in the first third, and other smaller problems here and there. But all the songs are great, the animation holds up very well, there are plenty of callbacks to previous movies, and it's filled with character scenes that hold a number of fond memories of mine. Just Littlefoot singing about his dead mother is enough to give it a pass. It's well-paced, firmly plotted, and full of heart, with some silly moments and a lot of great ones. I'm going to give The Land Before Time 5, The Mysterious Island, an A-. This movie and Journey Through the Mist are the kind of Land Before Time sequels that the later movies should have tried harder to imitate. Now let's go to 3 comment reviews from LBT Squad members. Joshua Chirella said, The Land Before Time 5, while not my personal favorite, did manage to build on from the past movies. I think it's important for sequels to reference or relate to what's been done before. Plus we saw Chomper, and it contains the song Always There, so I'll give it a B+. CL Skating said, The Land Before Time 5 is my favorite sequel. The story and problem were great, and the songs were some of the most memorable. It was also great to see Chomper make a reappearance and to talk, too. But it did have some flaws. The voice actor for Littlefoot was a little meh, and a coincidence got them into trouble, and a coincidence also got them out. But the movie overall was great, so I give it an A-. And Davey Santos said, The Land Before Time 5 was the first LBT movie I ever watched. I still remember my neighbors saying to me, turn on the TV and watch this movie, it is really cool. This movie is one of my favorite LBT sequels. In my opinion, it has a great story and great songs. I always sing Friends for Dinner during my day. I'll give it an A+. With nobody giving it anything lower than a B+, the 14 grades submitted to me from you guys average out to a straight A. You thought it was awesome. Now I think we're starting to move right along here. Stick around soon for my review on the next adventure, The Land Before Time 6, The Secret of Saurus Rock. To share your opinion on this movie, leave a review as well as your letter grade in the comments below and have them featured in the video. That's a wrap for now. If you liked this and you want to see more, slap the like button, subscribe for future videos, and follow us on Facebook. Thanks for watching. I'm your host Alex Pop, and I will see you again in 2016, the year of our childhood's return.